Okay, I know people. Hey, I got something to say. You're like, what? You're not going live. It's recorded. Well, we have a special guest and we weren't able to make it happen on the date. So Roxie and I recorded it. So we'll put it live for you. But before I bring her on, let me tell you a little bit about Roxie Munro. She's the author, illustrator of more than 45 award-winning nonfiction concept books for children. 45. She has also had 14 New Yorker magazine covers published, created 12 interactive game apps, and has worked in numerous private, corporate, and public art collections. She speaks widely at conferences, workshops, and does school and library visits. Roxie, I'm so happy you're here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I've been watching some of your programs and they're really cool. You cover such a variety of subjects with so many kind of cool people.
I think, and I love first, Roxie, you are my first children's book author illustrator ever. And I've been doing it for years. And I saw your stuff and I was so impressed. And who was it that referred us? Somebody that we both know.
John Higgins.
Yeah.
The travel guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
The travel guy.
I went to New York to see him and have dinner. He's a hoot. I love that dude. So shout out to John.
He's wonderful.
He's wonderful. So let's just dive into a little bit about you and how you got where you are. So do you live right in the heart of Manhattan? Where do you live, Roxie?
Yes, I live in Murray Hill at Park and 35th. I can look out of the window and see the Chrysler Building and Grand Central, which is great for travel because I could just, bop in there and go to the airports or the subway. My studio is in Long Island City, where I am now. This is part of my studio. You can see it. I have
Wait, it's so neat and organized.
Well, it's usually not this clean. And I also have, there's a skylight up there, which is great for natural even light, which is good for artists, of course. And so I just come here every day. I'm rather predictable, 9 to 5. And then on Saturdays, a lot of people think that artists just, when they get an inspiration, they just like run over and start doing art. Or if they're not in the mood, they don't show up. No. You have to show up every day and the inspiration will come.
They say that about writing. When I wrote my first few books, and they're nonfiction. So, it's not like it's months and years of writing. But somebody told me, just put a few words on the paper and then just see what comes. Sometimes it's just going to be a brain drain or scribble scrabble. And sometimes it's going to be words of wisdom. Is that what you do? You just start?
Right. You have to, first of all, being an artist is at least 50% business. So I spend an enormous amount of time doing letters and emails and contracts and sales and marketing and all that jazz. Then I do a lot of research. But also regarding the writing thing you just mentioned, same thing with art. People say, very, very well-known writers say, just put your butt in a chair. Don't have to be gross, but just sit down and do it. And you're right. Even if my sister, who's a professional artist, told me this once, and it's been very helpful. She said, you're not in the flow or the mood when you start. Just say to yourself, I'm gonna go and just paint that chimney or paint like the ear on the person or something. And then if you get, after about 10 or 20 minutes, you get into the flow, whether you like it or realize it or not. So you have to get that initial thing going. And the thing is to do it in little bits, as you said. Don't intimidate yourself and say, I have to finish. I just finished this huge 4-foot painting. And I just said to myself, because it was hard, just do 2 windows today, or just paint that red, corner in red, 3 inches of it. And soon, after a while, you're like, it's 50% done. And then it's 80% done. And then it's 95% done. And one day it's done. So that's the way to get going.
Yeah, you know what? Your pearls of wisdom can be used for so many aspects of life. I think about that. No, because it's the same thing with anybody who's an artist or working on anything they really want to do. A lot of times they quit because it's so overwhelming and they don't know where to start. But I do the same thing as you do. Even when I'm creating my journals, I was laughing that it doesn't take them long, but it really does take me long, but I do just blocks at a time. Like, here's the scribble scrabble part. There is a scribble scrabble. Here's the brain drain part. Here's the reset part. And that makes me feel like I have a sense of accomplishment every day. Also, the other thing you said, for all my fitness fanatics out there, everyone thinks, oh, I just wake up and I can't wait to work out every day. Heck no, there's some days I don't want to do it. But once I get myself out, I say, all right, I'm just going to walk the dog or bike for 5 minutes. And most times what happens? Yeah.
You keep going, right?
Yeah, we keep going.
And I mean, it's like a procrastination. It's the opposite of procrastination. I mean, we all procrastinate, but again, it's little bites, little chips at a time, and all of a sudden you've accomplished a lot.
Yeah. All right. So 45, 40.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of 9-to-5ers.
Well, it takes a while to pitch a book, as you probably know, and do the proposal and do the research. And then even when you get the contract, it takes me another 6 months to a year to physically do the book. And then it takes, by the way, as you know, also, it takes another year after you hand it into your publisher for them to edit it, design it, proofread it, send it, scan the illustrations, send it to the printer. And then the printer has to ship the book back. So it's like another whole year after that, by which time you've forgotten you've written a book. But anyway, it's just kind of nice to have a long-term process like that. I actually like, and also the collaboration. I've always been very much a loner, but I kind of enjoy the creative collaboration with the editor and the art director, which is kind of nice. They always have something. People say, well, when they ask for changes, does it irritate you, or do you say no, or who's the boss? You or the editor. Thing is, 90% of the time they have good suggestions, and you just dig in your heels and pick your battles. It's usually not a problem. I mean, I get along with. I usually get the contract, get the like the giant assignment, get the contract, and then they don't hear from me again for another 6 months or a year. I learned not to nickel and dime editors. That's not good for you. It's not good for them.
Yeah.
So, and you usually figure out what you're going to call or ask about. Given a few days, you kind of figure the problem out yourself. So,
that's why I was so impressed with 45, because I know the process and it's a long time. You're right. And once you get it, it's another year. But I'm thinking your books have so much illustration that it seems to me that would take longer, to make sure that it's exactly how your vision is and what they show you on the pages, because it's not just words,
Right. Actually, I find writing much more difficult than the artwork. Now, both of them require research, because I do nonfiction, also sometimes interactive or concept books. My nonfiction, they have to be accurate, including the illustrations. I can't fake it, So, but writing's the hard part, and editors often want me to, because I'm a writer and an illustrator, and most people who do books writers collaborate with a different illustrator, but I do them both, which editors like because they only have one contract instead of two. But I often, so I have to do all the writing first, which is hard. They prefer to do the writing first, then the editor wants to edit it, but I'm a visual thinker. So I have to do the drawings first and the storyboard and the layouts. But then I write it, and then I do the final illustrations, which I consider a reward for doing all that. I love to do them, particularly with color and pattern. A reward for doing all the research and the hard writing, because as you know, writing is rewriting. You might write something, one paragraph 10 times before you get it right or feel good about it.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So,
the process.
And I love the way you're breaking it down, because it really makes everyone out there realize how much goes into one book. You know, it's a lot. So how old were you when you started? Did you go to school for this?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well, I mean, I come from a very, very creative family. My sister's a professional portrait artist down in Washington. So when I was 6, we were always we were taken to museums from as toddlers. We had art on our walls and library books. But when I was 6, I won a countywide first prize for a painting of a bowl of fruit. And my picture was in the newspaper. And I thought, that's kind of cool. I think I'll be an artist. So ever since then, I was like the class artist and most talented in the yearbook, all these things. Then I went to college for 7 years, 4 colleges and universities. And then when I came out with a fine arts degree in graduate school in fine art, I decided, I realized that being a painter, particularly at that time, I was also in the Washington, D.C. area, which, you know, at that time was all politics and journalism. So if you went to these, I used to go to these Capitol Hill mixers, and they'd say, you know, whose committee are you on? And, you know, are you a Democrat or Republican? Or, you know, what subcommittee? And I go, I'm an artist. And there's blank look across people's faces. Now, in New York, we're used to all this, but in Washington, it was kind of rare at the time. So I started doing editorial work for the Washington Post and Associated Press, because I, you know, drew some drawings in a bar and put them on the wall, or I didn't, the owner did. And then the AP drank there all the time, and they came in, they're like, let's have her do some work for our news service. I'm like, okay. But then I started doing television courtroom art. And by the way, to go back to my sister, she, you know, was nominated for an Emmy for her work. So, I mean, again, a whole family is, because I think genetics are part of it, are craftsmen, artists. So I started doing courtroom work, and which is fun. I did the end of the Watergate trial and the Abscam trial, and did it about 5 years. Then I used to start coming to New York, and I broke into the New York Times once, because even in those days they had gatekeepers. Yeah. So I somehow snuck into the elevator, and I went up to the book review, and the editor goes, well, I can't use you, but maybe the New Yorker can. And I thought, I never thought of the New Yorker. So anyhow, I went over there, and that was a real process. You just left your portfolio and came back a week later. I lived in Washington, so I had to take, 6 hours of trains.
Yeah.
And they bought the first drawing I ever gave them. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then 2 or 3 years later, I sold a cover. And the day I sold the cover, and I was in Washington, I had a nice life. The day I sold the cover, on the train going back, we had the Village, remember the Village Voice? Oh. And they would have ads for like subletting apartments. And I saw an apartment trade. Someone wanted to be in Washington for 6 months. And I thought, great. So I traded my apartment with a woman up at Columbia. And the first day I moved to New York, I was like, this is my kind of town. I mean, I had no money. I was lived at one point in a horrible place full of a lofty thing down in 8th Avenue in Chelsea with rats and roaches. And I was so happy. I just love New York. Always have, always will.
Oh, Roxie, I have to have you back on for a longer interview. There is so much to unpack there. And that's fascinating, even up till smart you got it. But in making sure we stay with our time, it was fascinating. There were rats, but I was so happy. Okay. All right, let me get my composure. So I want you to dive in. You mentioned a little bit, but I want to make sure they understand that when you say you can't dive in. Oh, there you go. They understand that you said you have to fact check, that you're not just, writing a child's book, that this has stuff in it. You said I have to get the pictures right and I have to get the information right. Tell them a little bit more about that.
Well, all my recent books, for instance, this diving coral reef book, a book just coming out on lizards. These are just the proofs.
We need to hold it up a little bit. Show the diving.
Dive in, right. So all of these books
dive in
have to be vetted, and they are actually, my books are actually vetted by professors or specialists. I have a dinosaur book that was vetted by a guy at Ohio University. Got people at the Natural History Museum have vetted my snake book. So, because you don't want, these are for young people, and even though they're, very vibrant and colorful and hopefully interesting, and sometimes they have a game element like a maze or finding games, but they still have to be accurate. So I don't want a fourth grade boy or some librarian from Boston writing me a letter after the book's in print and saying, you made a mistake, you said a hippopotamus was a rhinoceros, or you didn't, you left a zero off how many millions of years the dinosaurs have been around. So these are vetted, so they're vetted not only by me, and then my husband's my first reader, but the editor, then a copy editor, a proofreader, the art director, and then we package that up and send the proofs to a professional whom we pay, a consultant, which is usually a scientist if it's a science book, and they sign off on it, and I almost never have to change anything. One time I had a claw and I had to turn the claw a little way, and one time I did a snake with too many too many rows. But other than that, I try not to have to screw up and have to redo the drawings.
I had no idea, but not all books are like that, right?
No.
This is an educational and fun and beautiful interactive book. So are they using your books in schools?
Yes, I'm quite I'm like a cult figure. Many people, trade books are the books that are in Barnes and Noble and bookstores, which I have. Some of my books are in Barnes and Noble and have been for years. I've done signings there. But most of my market is what we call the institutional market, which is libraries and schools, which makes me very happy. And I go visit schools and visit libraries and go to conferences. And it's a wonderful world. And most of my colleagues are just lovely, lovely people. We all know each other. It's not, one time I was at a cocktail party with all kinds of writers, and, they were grumping about each other, being jealous and stuff like that. And someone said, adult publishing, it's dog eat dog, but in children's publishing, it's bunny eat bunny, And someone said, that's because the spoils are so small,
Oh my God. Or so, just attract a different kind of person.
Right.
All right, Roxie, can we see even just one or two of your books, like really see it? Even if we don't have to go through the whole thing, but I want them to really get a visual here.
Okay, well, I think, why don't we look at anteaters, bats, and boas? Right now, I'm kind of getting engaged more in political things like global warming. This book, this is a book series coming out from Holiday House called Books for a Better Earth. And this has things, desert habitats and how to save them. So, I'm not a big, I don't push it a lot. Most of the books are just done for information, but we do have issues with, as you know, the rainforest, deserts, polar systems, global warming. So this is great fun. And each page in this book, I have a introduction, and then each page, you see this tail, this flows into the next one. And here you see this this windy thing, and here's this guy and the different creatures in here. So this is the tail of this. So it fits together like a puzzle in the end, you'll see. And then this is my favorite. Then in the end, so these animals are all real size. So they shelled out for a big spread here. The publisher did, which is great.
That's awesome.
That's a giant anteater. And then you go through the whole book, and there's my personal favorite is this guy.
Oh my God.
And then at the end of the book, you're flying above it all. And then there's everything in that book, your path, all these connect like a picture, like a jigsaw puzzle. And then you've got the different animals, mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, insects. I can't pronounce things, centipedes. Then you have, this is called back matter. And in my books and many, now it's kind of important, even in some fiction books, to have back matter, which librarians love. So more layers of rainforest, preserving rainforests, a glossary of words children should know how to learn more, an index, and then even the end papers are maps of where you would find rainforests. This, and the coral reef book is very similar. So, and some of my books, I did a book on snakes where you just saw the patterns on the scales and skin, and you had to guess what kind of snake it is by some other information. And another book on birds where you just saw the eggs and you had to guess. So a lot of my books have are not only interactive, but they have a twist to them. I mean, I did a book on maize, like where does food come from? And, you know, farms and land and food. You can really think of it like a maze. And much of the world's a maze when I think about it. Grand Central's a maze. Macy's is a maze.
Roxie,
mazes.
first of all, they're stunning. I got to get some. I just love them. I want them sitting here on my desk, number one. But number two, all the detail that you put in them, oh my goodness. I find it so fascinating. And you must never get bored, because researching all those topics, oh my God, and meeting all those people that are the experts.
Right.
I would love that. I mean, I can't draw, but I would love that part.
Yeah, it has, creating a book like books like these do have a lot of variety. As I said, you're alone a lot when you're doing all the work, but you're also engaging in people, not only the people who produce it, the publishers and the editors and the librarians. And then after the book comes out, you know, you're sprung into the world and you go to schools and talk to young children. And let me tell you something, children appreciate beauty. I don't talk down to them visually and do things really simple and cartoony. I've had children, they brought tears to my eyes. One class, I had a third grade class, and after my talk, we have Q&A, and then it gets cut off like 15 minutes, and the teacher says, okay. So afterward, after one class, a little girl came up to me and her teacher was with her, and the teacher said, you didn't call on Ellen, and she had a question for you. And I said, sorry, Ellen, you know, what was your question? I thought she'd ask about the animals, and which is mostly what people ask about. And she said, how do you make them so pretty? I just, you know, I was like, that's the point. Children understand beauty. I mean, I don't like do something where each tree is identical. I make each one separate because that's the way real life is, you know?
I do, Roxie. I do. I just want to squeeze your cheeks. All right. Anyhow. Okay. We're running out of time here, and I didn't even get in any of the questions. So I got a couple questions that we got to get in. And for those of you who I didn't get to your questions, it's cool. We'll let you know how to meet Roxie afterwards, and you can ask some of her questions. Okay. The biggest one I got a bunch of times is, did you ever complete a book and go, no way, no how, and trash it and start over? They want to know, you were like, oh my God, I just do not like this. You don't trash a book, but you trash ideas. I have these flat files over there. So I have failed ideas where I have submitted certain projects to publishers and gotten rejected. Sometimes the book stays rejected forever. And again, it's a dummy. I do some degree of research. It's a concept that what's getting rejected is the concept or the idea, not me necessarily or my style, I hope. But I'll tell you, this book, which I love and adore, was rejected out of hand. I did a dummy about 12 years ago. I stuck it in my flat file over there. And it got rejected. I had an agent for this. I usually don't have an agent, but I had an agent for this. They couldn't sell it. I couldn't sell it. It sat there. My regular publisher was not interested. It sat there for 10 years. And about 4 years ago, I pulled it out and I cold called it or cold emailed another publisher, and they loved it and they published it. And I'm crazy about it. And they even sprung in the back for a big, which is expensive to print, a big poster.
that kid, big poster that kids can color in one side of or put on their wall. But so that's kind of a don't ever give up. And yes, you do dumb ideas, but sometimes, and I say this to young children who write, everyone think, when you're young and naive, you think that you write something that's brilliant. But again, you go back and look at it in 2 weeks and you're going to find out you could rewrite it better. So that's why writing is rewriting. So I actually did revise this a little bit. And sometimes it's just one thing like you might look at 5 years later and there's a key and then unlocks it. And all of a sudden you're like, that'll pull it together. So, but I've got plenty of rejected things, not to worry.
Well, that leads me into this question, which is they want to know how you handle rejection. And I love the fact that when I was asking you, what did you want to get out to women of the world? You were saying that you have to be confident enough. I love this, to accept rejection.
Right. You have to, yeah. And I've often thought, I remember that my parents were very good about that. I mean, we were encouraged to, nowadays kids don't want to be different. And of course, social media has made this much worse. But, you're encouraged to be like your peers, or you're not encouraged, but it's inculcated into children now. You want to be kind of alike, or you want to be accepted. And my family, we're like, it's cool to be different, be odd, be strange, So
awesome.
So to go back to the rejection thing, I mean, if you're rejected 100% of the time, year after year after year, that can be a little discouraging. But one other way to handle it is to have alternatives. In other words, right now I have like 3 different projects out, not 1, 3. So
Gotcha.
2 of them get rejected, or all 3 of them get rejected. You have to have something else in the works. And also I really get over things like that. I mean, and artists' financial lives are like this. That's always an issue. But you just have to get over it fast. Don't dwell on it. And again, it's almost like acting when people get rejected from acting. Maybe they're supposed to be 6 feet tall and they're only 5 feet tall. Well, hey. So it's not always about you or not always about me. It's about, and also it's the climate. I mean, trends come and go. One of my best-selling books and most famous award-winning book I ever did, the editor told me 15 years later, she said, in today's climate, that book never would have gotten published.
What was that?
So
Which book is that?
It's actually the first book I ever did, the Inside Outside Book of New York, because at that time it was, and I did a whole series afterwards. But the thing is, you have to be in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you can be very, very talented and have a brilliant idea. But maybe someone did the same thing, by the way. A big book just came out because you don't know what's in the hopper in that 2-year waiting period. Maybe I had an idea to do a book on the polar regions and still might. And I have a certain format for the book. And within a week of handing it to the publisher, we found out one had just been published. But that had been in the works and I didn't know it. One very similar, almost the same title.
Yeah.
So you can't help that. So sometimes rejection has nothing to do with you and you just have to carry on. I've had people say to me, well, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it 1 shot. And I'm like, 1 shot? It's like acting. You got to, poor actors get rejected all the time. And they can't just go out and do 1 audition in their life.
Yeah, 1 and done. That's it. I guess I wasn't going to do it. Oh my God. I wouldn't have done most of the things I've done in my life. Roxie, we have to have you back. You're awesome. You're awesome. I love your journey. Thank you for sharing just a little piece of your world. I find it fascinating. And not only that, I find that so much of your wisdom can be applied to so many aspects of life. So many aspects.
Yeah.
So, will you come back?
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me. This has just been very exciting.
Ooh, I was so excited. Like, Roxie's coming on. All right, before we go, how can they find you? How can they get your books, your art, whatever it is? They didn't answer any of our questions. How can they reach out to you?
Just my website's the best way, including I have contact information on there. RoxieMunro.com, or just my name, RoxieMunro, no E, .com. It's the Scottish spelling, not Marilyn Monroe spelling. People spell it all different ways. But anyway, yeah, just the website's fine. Great. And I will answer you for sure. And people have come to my studio. Sometimes school classes come. So if you're in the New York area, give me a email.
All right, Roxie Munro, thank you so much. I'm glad we figured it out. Hey, I got something to say, people. Roxie had something to say. And don't you worry if this is not your platform for watching. I'm going to spread it on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would both appreciate you sharing, liking, and rating it. And you know what I'm going to say. Until next time, toodles.
Bye.
Bye, Roxie. Thank you.
Thank you.